Rejection stings. Maybe it's, the text that never came back to you. Maybe it's the job that you never got. Maybe the person who had ghosted you with, zero explanation. All of that really feels personal to you. Of course, it's like a quiet confirmation of every single fear that you already had about yourself. But what if I told you that rejection isn't always about you? Because the truth is that rejection says just as much about the other person as it does for you. It tells you everything about the needs, the timing, the inner world of that other person as it does about you. In fact, rejection can tell even more. People have been conditioned to take rejection as, a direct attack on your worth, something that's meant to degrade you. As if every single no means that you're not good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, But sometimes that no has nothing to do with any of those factors. Sometimes people simply walk away because they're not ready. Sometimes people, they leave because they're afraid. Sometimes they're overwhelmed from everything. Sometimes they're dealing with battles that you simply can't see. You could be absolutely perfect on paper. Kind, stable, genius, genuine, all of that shit. And you could still not be what they're looking for. You could still be unworthy to them. But that isn't what makes you unworthy as a person. Matter of fact, that's what makes you a human. And the fact that they're able to reject you, even though you're perfect on paper, is what makes them human as well. Rejection isn't some sort of verdict, it's not like a courthouse telling you, no, fuck out my face. Instead, rejection could simply be a reflection or an alignment between that person and you. Or, well, in fact, it could be a lack of the alignment. Just as you've walked away from other people, people will walk away from you. That isn't cruelty. Instead, it's simply honesty, and it's being true to oneself. It's understanding oneself. However, obviously, knowing this doesn't stop the mind from spiraling. Obviously, you can continue thinking, wow, maybe I am the problem. However, after rejection, people tend to go digging. They tend to question themselves, was I too much? Was I not enough? Did I say the wrong thing to them? Did I wear the wrong thing on that date? Maybe if I was just a little more, fill in the blank here, that they would have stayed for me. And of course, self-reflection is an important thing. Growth, again, is an important thing. However, self-imprisonment and self-blame is such a foolish trap to go down. Because, like I said, sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's not your fault. Not everything that doesn't go your way is your fault. Sometimes there's just things out of your control. And not every single person who leaves you does so because you are lacking something. I think we need to normalize the fact that people can still reject you and see your value. People can end relationships with you and still care for you. A job could pass you down or could fire you, but, it doesn't mean that you're an incompetent person. Maybe they just saw someone who better fit for them. Maybe it was simply the timing. Maybe it was just unlucky. Maybe the hardest one to accept, I think, is that maybe it was simply life being life. There's this idea that I come back to often. You don't want what's not for you, and you especially don't want to force what isn't a mutual yes. A relationship where you're the only one providing is not love. A job that overlooks your worth and outworks you and burns you out is not your dream job. A friendship that only shows up when you shrink yourself in comparison isn't a real friendship. So once you're actually rejected, take the hurt. Let the pain in, but don't allow the pain and the hurt to define you as a person. Instead, take that hurt as a lesson. Adjust yourself if you need, but don't contort your entire identity trying to be more acceptable to those people who rejected you. Instead, understand that rejection can be redirection. It can be protection, and it can be a clearing. It can be a pause before something that actually fits enters your life. I know that obviously this idea sounds quite cliche. However, sometimes cliches are only repeated because they're true. The most important part is do not allow rejection to close you off as a person. Don't allow rejection to convince you that you weren't who you were meant to be. Don't let rejection convince you that you're hard to love. Don't let it allow you to believe that you are unworthy for anyone else. The vulnerability that comes from rejection is dangerous Because the more walls that you build trying to block out the vulnerability, the harder it becomes for the right people to reach you. They have to climb over every single one of those walls. Stay open and stay soft. Not for them, but simply for yourself. Because every single time you get back up, every single time you show up as yourself, even after someone couldn't handle that version of you, you reclaim your own power.